Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Unmatched Style chat session. I'm here with Campbell McGuiness. I pronounced that right, didn't I, Campbell?
Campbell McGuiness.
Campbell McGuiness. He is the creator
Correct.
of StackLayout, and I wanted all you to learn a little bit about StackLayout and see what you thought.
I'd never really launched anything as such. I've been kind of coding in a vacuum,
Right.
if you sort of know what I mean. Um, kind of working on projects with just a small group and not really shopping things out so much. And so when I came up with it, um, I was sort of like, oh, someone must have done this before,
Nope.
you know. And I looked around and there's a bunch of other things that use similar parts of what I'm doing, but I've kind of put them together in a way that nobody else has. And I was just really surprised at the reaction, to be honest. I was like, wow, there's lots of people that really like it and are interested in it. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's great.
Well, what was the impetus for you to kind of do it in the first place?
Um, it basically solves problems for me.
Hmm.
Um, as an HTML and CSS coder, I'm always laying out web pages, and I like to do it from scratch.
Right.
So um, yeah, I really didn't like the kind of techniques that were commonly used with floating elements and having clear fixes and all those sort of things, which are kind of the norm, but to me always seemed really hacky, and I just didn't like the behavior of floated elements, basically. And so I just, yeah, started mucking around with inline block and all that, and found that this system just made things so much easier. I could mock up a web page just like I could look at something, a design or an existing web page or something, and get it into like recode it much
Right.
faster using this system.
So you
So
kind of
it just,
started.
yeah, basically
That's,
it basically just solved problems for me. So
right.
that's why I use it, which I find is the case with lots of web technology. People make it because they are trying to solve a problem for themselves,
Right.
and that's, I think, the way the best things are made.
Absolutely. So that's how you
Yeah.
started. You built this as a framework for yourself, and you just kind of like
Yeah.
built it up and decided to give it to us.
Yeah. Well, actually, what pushed me in that direction um, more recently was working a lot with a CMS that I've also been developing with a friend, and it
Hmm.
lends itself to component based layouts.
Right.
So where you've got just little blocks of like little modules, and some of them are repeated.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I just needed a way to easily kind of just drop components in anywhere and make them behave nicely, which I think is common to most web pages anyway. And then I
Right.
just applied that kind of micro structure of components to a whole site and found that I could nest things infinitely, and it worked on all levels.
Okay. That's cool. So did you start with the responsive nature of the framework, or did you kind of add that in?
Um, I started with um, there were a couple of things which I've written in the philosophy page of the Stack Layout site that kind of pushed me in that direction. Um, One of them was, as I said before, the float. Um,
Right.
uh, yeah, the behavior of floats was I just found it really undesirable. Um, and um, inline blocks I just really liked because they behave like text. Like, if you think about a web page, what's the part of it that always seems to just behave itself? It's the text. It just,
Right.
you know it stacks up vertically. It just does whatever you like.
Right.
Anything you do to it, it just does the right thing. You can center it. You can make it go left, make it go right. It doesn't kind of, yeah. So I thought, hey, how can I use that behavior for the entire site? How can I make my site behave nicely?
That's
And
cool.
so, yeah, that's what led me there. I mean, it started off doing like thumbnail thumbnails for an image gallery or something,
Right.
where you've got different size thumbnails,
Yeah.
and you want them to be kind of vertically aligned, but in rows. That was one of the things, and I didn't want to have clear fixes over a certain number of components. I just wanted to have it so that if I chucked a whole bunch of components in there, that they just stack up nicely on rows, and I could vertically align them.
Right.
So that was one of the kind of really common uses that I had for it initially, because I've been kind of using this technique for a while, and a bunch of people have, just the whole using inline blocks, and
Right.
even for like menu items and stuff, so you can have kind of blocks in the center without having to use fixed widths and like negative margins and all that kind of stuff to make it work. Yeah. And the other use for it was, these, you'll often go to a landing page or like a pricing page or something on a site, and they've got like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 components that are, maybe different packages for something.
Right.
And they kind of need to be aligned vertically, and maybe the middle one's a bit bigger.
Right.
So that just kept cropping up in all these sites that I needed to do, and I was like, I don't know how much content's going to be in these components, because the text size could change or the price could change, or and I don't want to make them fixed height, and I just thought I need blocks that do what text does, and just like it kept cropping up, and I thought, yeah, that was my solution.
Really cool. If there's one thing you want people to know about StackLayout, what is that?
That it's not like other grid systems. In fact, it's not a grid system.
Yeah, it's not really a grid system.
I mean, that's the way a lot of people could kind of access it, because they're familiar with existing grid systems. Mm-hmm. But it's really it's just a way to divide a page up into components and have them behave nicely and allow you to vertically align them.
Right.
I don't know. This is a long-winded description. You're asking me for one thing.
It could be several things.
It's not. Yeah. Okay. So it's not a grid system. It's a layout system.
Right.
Because there's no underlying like 12 columns or something, and a fixed gutter size or anything like that. It's just basically, okay, we start with a full width, and then we can halve it, we can make it into 3, we can make it into 4, we can make it into 5, and any division of those. Right. And then you can divide those components inside that, so you can nest those divisions. So with that flexibility, you can pretty much create any layout. I didn't go to like 1/6 divisions, because I just didn't have enough examples of where I'd need to divide a page into 6 things.
Right.
It was always like, divide the page in half first, and then divide the page into 3, and then divide that half into 3, and then that half into 2.
Yeah. Like most normal layouts.
Yeah, and that's I mean, maybe at some point I'll add the 1/6 support, but it seemed like too much. I just wanted to keep it really lean. Right. Just
it definitely is.
and let people use those kind of limitations. Awesome. To actually be creative and create lots of variations on it.
That's great.
And it's funny the kind of feedback I've had, like on Reddit initially when I posted, I had a lot of people just going, please don't create stuff like this. Like grid systems basically are bad because they make people use unsemantic classes and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, well, they've got a point. I'm totally for semantic web. I think it's the way to go. And you can actually do that with StackLayout. You can modify the CSS and just kind of chuck your semantic classes in there to make those components behave like the stack components. So you can actually strip all your markup of the kind of stack 1 of 2 or stack 3 of 4 or whatever. You can then just explicitly apply your own widths for those components.
Well, yeah, I mean I would think that's how you would take over something like this and use it for yourself. I mean, you take it and internalize it and use it for your project.
Yeah, and I'm starting to get a few emails back and a bit of feedback of people who have done that, and it's great, you know. Yeah. And it's also made me think about the documentation that I've written, because you know, things that just seem really obvious to me, like, oh, you can't nest a stack content component. Like, there's no point, because the stack content component is like the last descendant, I suppose, of all the stack components, and it's what just wraps content. So why would you put content inside content? Right. But I didn't write that anywhere on the site, and I've had a couple of people doing that and wondering, like, why their layouts funny, but it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to tell people not to do that.
Yeah, documentation's kind of a beast.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be. Like, it's funny because I just realized that I added all this stuff in there that was kind of like trying to sell it, but I don't really need to sell it. I just need to make it easy to use, and that will not that like I'm making any money off it, but you know, that will make people want to use it because it's easy to use. I mean, it is easy to use, but the site makes it seem more complicated than it is. Unfortunately. But that'll be the next thing I do, I think. Apart from adding some of these small improvements that I've got from people over the past few weeks since I launched it, the next thing I'll do will be kind of simplifying the site, the documentation, just putting up some actual diagrams on there, because just to make that link between kind of explaining it in words and having actual HTML and CSS demos, it's people kind of sometimes need just a picture. You know, this is what it does, this is how it works, and like visualize that, and then that helps them pull it apart. Yeah, in their own head.
Well, thanks for talking with me. I wanted to help you get the word out about StackLayout because I saw it and I liked it, and I thought other people should know about it. So
thanks, Jane.
So thank you so much.